Concacaf final round, FIFA World Cup qualifiers for Qatar 2022. We have head coach John Herdman for a media call. And we will start with Neil Davidson, followed by Derek Van Diest. Neil?
Thanks, Richard. Good afternoon, John. I hope you're doing well.
Hey, Neil.
You said after Wednesday's match that you'd have had trouble naming a man of the match from the various performances, and certainly a lot of people stood out. But I'm just wondering, in the wake of Alfonso's quite amazing goal, what have you thought of the reaction to it? And I'm just wondering, did your phone light up following that game?
Yeah, I mean, the reaction's been, I think, what it should have been. I mean, that goal scored by Messi or Ronaldo, any top class player around the world, would have went viral. And it was just, it's a special goal. I think it'll go down in Canadian folklore, but at the same time, it'll mean nothing if we don't qualify for the World Cup. It'll just be one of those moments. So while we can all get excited about what we achieved, I'm back in the harsh reality now of being down in the basement and getting ready to go again, just coming off a good hour-long call with Greg Berhalter to chew the fat and compare the notes and get ready for Edmonton. It's and bringing Fonzie home, and that's a big part of being in that next round. So it's a difficult one, Neil, because the excitement was brilliant. I mean, we had a wonderful night. We had a good night's sleep, I think, all as a staff when we got to bed, because that night will be remembered for those fans that were there. And Alphonso Davies is special. We know that, but special players have to show up in big moments, and he showed up with something that these fans, it was just a treat for them.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll have a chance to come back too. But Derek, would you like to start with your question?
Yeah. Hey, John. Just kind of following up on Neil's question with Fonzie and him coming to Edmonton, and just how big that's going to be, especially the way he's just, it's been unbelievable. It's only been 5 years since he kind of left and jumped on the scene, and what he's doing now. Just how much excitement is there for him to come home and the whole team to come to Edmonton and try to continue this?
Yeah, I mean, he's over the moon that he's going to get this opportunity, and he deserves it. I mean, he's a Champions League winner. He's during that COVID period, I think, he was a real shining light for our sport with his achievements. He kept people motivated and going, and for him to be able to celebrate being on the field with a lot of the people that helped him get there, I think that's a big driver for him. He's passionate about the place he grew up, and I know he'll use that, but alongside Sam Adekugbe. And I think for our players, the majority of them are Ontario-born players, but they're excited to come to Edmonton. They recognize, what we're trying to achieve in Edmonton by, bringing the game to a pretty historic stadium, a stadium that's filled up before. When we've needed, the fans to turn up in Edmonton, they turned up in 2015. So we've got that belief they can do it again, and with a couple of hometown heroes there, we're sure it's going to bring people out. If even if you're not football fans, to get the chance to see Davies do what he does on a football field, I mean, this is a generational thing. It's something not to be missed.
Thanks, John. I look forward to seeing you when you get here.
Thank you.
Gabriel?
Okay. Thank you very much. John, thanks for attending. Against the game with Mexico, do you think the game is relocated to Edmonton just to maybe play against with the weather. I mean, the weather will be a factor to help Canada team to help them to get some points. But do you think some players from the Mexican international players that perform in Europe, as Raul Jimenez, Andres Guardado, Irving Lozano, maybe the weather condition won't be the hardest thing to help the Canadian team?
Yeah, I think the weather, the weather is a factor in games. There's a reality of, we have a lot of players playing in Europe as well. Maybe 50%, 60% of our squad will be, traveling from warmer climates. But a lot of these guys have grown up in Canada. This is playing playing in those artificial turfs, standing on the look. I've got my own kids. We stand here in BC in the winter, and it's bloody freezing on the side of the field. They're running around with their toques and gloves on, and so I think we've got a mentality here that we're gritty as Canadians, and we'll welcome and adapt to those conditions. I mean, the conditions are important. I played in Edmonton in October, November with the women's team, and again, I still remember the first training session when the players are feeling like their lungs have just been frozen. It's an interesting experience playing in that level of cold. This isn't British cold. It's not Spanish or Italian cold. This is Edmonton cold, and it's tricky. And a lot of teams have struggled. We looked at the research from teams that have traveled to Canada in the past that qualitatively may have had an advantage, and certainly the history would suggest it's not easy. So a lot of factors come into that decision. Bringing Alfonso back to Edmonton's a good one. The fact we've always had great crowds there, and the weather is an added opportunity, because we get a good 7, 8, 9 days in that environment before the Mexico game to live it, to adapt, to endure it, plus a game there in those conditions. So I just know when we flew to Mexico and you're in the heat, the pollution of Mexico City and the altitude, we had to adapt. It's not easy, but the players adapted well. So at the end of the day, you can make decisions and whatever, any little 1% marginal gain we can create, we'll try and create it. But, football's football. When the whistle blows, whoever wants it more will pretty much take the points. And that's typically what happens in sport.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Gavino, followed by Joshua, and then Hadi.
Hi, John. It's Gavino here in Montreal. John, I want to speak about the winter window. As you know, some MLS players will be out of competition in the next 4, 5, or 6 weeks or so. Is it an advantage or a disadvantage for your club? And I just want to know what's going to happen with those players who will be out of competition for 2 months in December and January. Will there be early training camp or something like this? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question, Gavino, and obviously something we've been planning for. I mean, the reality of if you look at the sort of 26-man roster that we're, or the players we've relied on, there's a lot of players that are not MLS players. The good news for us, I think people like Tejon Buchanan will be in Europe at that time, back into season. And I've got a feeling some of our boys will move. I'm really confident that we might see some moves during that end of MLS season. And hopefully we've got guys in clubs in Europe come that January period. So they're in that match rhythm. But without a doubt, having that experience against Iceland, having the experience last January, as we were prepping for the US game that never really got started. Yeah, it is a challenge. These guys are not where they usually need to be. And even when you bring them together in that camp, it's so early in their preseason, they're not firing on all cylinders. But when you look at a lot of these teams we have to compete against, you think of Kyoto at Montreal, who's a massive player for Honduras. You look at El Salvador with two of their key players are MLS guys. There's going to be a lot of these teams in a very similar boat. But the good news for us, with a squad that's 60, 70% European, and maybe during that period, I'll lean more on some of those European guys that you see in a couple of new faces that got added. Not new and old faces that have come back in. Those guys will be in big consideration. People that are in match rhythm in big consideration during that period. But hopefully it motivates some of those MLS guys that have made a big impact on our team to really push through that off season and show up in the best shape they possibly can. And they're motivated, Gavino. I've sensed that, so I don't see too many problems.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, merci. Joshua Cloak, followed by Hadi.
Hey, John, you mentioned that this was kind of a time for you to regroup and plan, that kind of thing. When I think about this team and what's kind of stuck out through the first 6 games is how in a very short amount of time, this team has certainly come together as a group. Players talk about brotherhood very often. I'm just curious from your perspective, when you have a little downtime, what are you reading? What goes into your efforts to create that brotherhood, to really build that team? Because as you said, it gets harder and harder with players having to come, from faraway locations. What goes into team building for you?
Yeah, it's a philosophy that's developed through just experience over time and some good mentors. I keep reverting back to my time in New Zealand. I was pretty fortunate to be part of one of the most fertile learning grounds that you could ever experience. The New Zealand Olympic strategy, if you understand, they're able always to punch well above their weight in terms of the medals they land. And it's not by chance, it's by design. So 10 years in that country, you're getting access to some very innovative coach development methodology that, for me, laid a real solid foundation. Getting access to the All Black environments, the Silver Ferns environments, the Black Sticks environments, all of these sports in New Zealand that would collaborate to help each other grow and develop. And that level of collaboration, so young coaches put into accelerator programs, and those accelerator programs, I'm in seminars and on stages with Billy Bean, talking about analytics and understanding some of his methodology. This is, in 2010 in New Zealand, the All Blacks performance analyst back in 2009 helped us create a very innovative performance analytics program for our teams. And that's really been the foundation of some of the core of what we do to align some of the motivation of our units, individuals, key players. So it's been a long process, but I always come back to 3 things. And, I'll say this to any coach, you ever see your team overperform, it'll always be factored on 3 key things, and that's team spirit. And that team spirit is the level of trust that you build. And that level of trust is the shared purpose that every man is turning up to achieve the same thing. And that's the sort of ego dissipates and people become very clear on, we're going to do this. And it has to be for more than themselves. It's always for a bigger cause, which I think we've generated in this group. So the team spirit is ultimately built on trust, and at the core of trust is safety. And that safety is what you've seen from Alphonso Davies, Tejon Buchanan, guys that are willing to try things, to do things that, in unsafe environments you won't do. You're too busy watching your back, too busy wondering who's going to pull the shirt off your back. You become too predisposed with the effects of pressure. So I think we've pressure tested the environment. We've made it more resilient to the outside forces that can impact the inside. And we've made the team spirit, as the players call it, the brotherhood. We've made it strong enough that every man believes they can bring their best. And if they fail, they can fail greatly. And that's something we've instilled. And then it's tactical excellence. As I said right at the beginning of this campaign back in 2018, the vision tactically would be the most organized and adaptable team in Concacaf. That was the mantra we set out, the vision, the goal. So when you've got team spirit and people trust each other, then they can focus on just getting their jobs done. And that's understanding collectively, how we adapt in games, people's roles and responsibilities in our identity. And ultimately, how those groups and units come together to bring the best out of each other. But more importantly, as I say, tactical excellence is every man knowing their role and being able to fill that to the best of their ability, given the circumstance. And then the final piece is team chemistry. When you've got trust and people are clear on what they've got to do on the pitch, then chemistry forms. That's where people are willing to mask each other's weaknesses and highlight each other's strengths. They're willing to do things to make you look good. And then you see those sort of cohesive partnerships start to form, the Johnny and Alfonso partnership, the Stephen Vittoria, Alistair Johnston, Kamal Miller, back three partnership. And then you throw Daniil Henry straight in there and nothing really changes. It just gels again. So, that chemistry piece it can only form when trust is strong and people are clear on the roles and responsibilities of the collective. And it's a formula that I used with the women's team, and it's a formula that I'm using here.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hadi Raphael, followed by Maxime Fossi, and then Neil Davidson to wrap up.
Thank you, Richard. Hey, John. I'm looking at the results right now in the qualifications. Canada stands third, unbeaten, having been able to take points away in Mexico and in the US. You have to feel confident about the rest of the qualifications, no?
Yeah, but I always feel like confidence is brittle. It's always fragile because, one game, one big loss in Euro. Yeah, you're gonna always be stripped. So I just think it's just like one game at a time. And I keep saying this to the guys: enjoy the moment, enjoy that moment. 27,000 people banging a drum, and we're there together, and you feel it, and it's special. Enjoy it because you earned it. We've got 27,000 people ready to fight with you and for you, but it's gone. It's ephemeral. The next moment now is November. Like, whatever you've got to do between now and then to ensure you come in tip-top shape, whatever you've got to do to make sure that when you turn up, you're ready to perform. And those two games, it's so tight, Hadi, you can see it. Like, all it takes is one slip up in one window, and that's it. The dreams, you're back in a position now where you're fighting for your life. And if we hadn't won that game against Panama, would have been in that middle group, scrapping away in this next window. We're still in the top three, but it's one game at a time. It's a war. It's an absolute war. We've got 8 games left, and every game will be a battle. As I say, I was just speaking with a US coach this morning, and we were just talking about it's just a battle. It's hell. It's tight turnarounds, hardly any sleep, things out of your control, like travel situations. You get to a field and it looks good. After 15 minutes, it turns to shit. And you're trying to adapt in that moment. And then, yeah, it is an absolute war. And I don't think it's going to be resolved until that last window. I honestly believe like it's going to go right to the wire for every team. Everyone's fighting. I might be wrong, but everyone had written Jamaica off, you know, and where are they at now? You know, they're back in the fight, and when the big guns turn back up again, you know, that might be the team we're fighting with right at the end. Who knows? But what we take care of is our business. Can we stay undefeated? Can we keep bringing that spirit and that collective purpose to every game? And that's my mission, just to keep inspiring this group to show up with everything they've got.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci. Maxime Fossey, s'il vous plaît. Maxime.
Hi, John. Thanks for your time today. Lucas Cavallini was recovering from an injury this international break, but he's returned to full training in Vancouver with the Whitecaps this week. What does he bring to your squad when he's fully fit, and how important is team depth for you?
Yeah, I'll start with the depth. I mean, the depth is critical, and I go back to the Gold Cup. You know, I think we know that we can push any team in Concacaf because of our depth, and it really brought a level of confidence and competition to the group when we came out the Gold Cup, because there was a group of guys that were always seen or felt that they were inferior to, you know, all these European Champions League winners and championship winners, and they went out and stepped out for Canada in a way I don't think people expected. And someone like Cavallini, who was part of that win against Costa Rica, you know, he was part of that growth. He was part of that trust and confidence building. So to not have him in, it's tough, because he's a warrior. Like, he is an absolute warrior, that guy. Like, hard as nails. He's got a bulletproof mind, and he just wants to get on there and impose himself on the field. So, you know, I think we missed that. I think in the Jamaica game, we'd have really, you know, Jonathan David could have really done with having a Lucas Cavallini up front with him, you know, just to be that battering ram at times, and to draw attention to himself, so he frees him up. So it was tough. This window was tough without him. He's a big personality, although, you know, we've got a lot of big personalities, and I thought the boys that came in, Charles-Andre Brim, Liam Miller, Schaffelberg, who played in those forward positions, all contributed. You know, just showing that our depth is getting bigger and bigger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Neil Davison, I believe you had a follow-up question to close.
Thanks, Richard. John, just going back to your New Zealand days, as you know, people have written books on the All Blacks about how their culture can help businesses and things like that, talking about the team's humility, sweeping the sheds, even the senior people, leave the dressing rooms clean. Is that kind of humility and everybody being the same, whether they've got one cap or 80, is that part of your culture?
Yeah, I'd like to. It's a great question, Neil. It's difficult. It's difficult to instill in sport. It's not easy, but I'd like to say that the leadership group that we've had in place, they've evolved. Like, this group of men, Jonathan Osorio was not the same guy I met 4 years ago. You know, the first camp I had, there were 2 fights in 2 training sessions, two punch-ups in Mercia, and I was blown away. Like, you know, and people were saying, "Oh, this is men's football," and I stood against it. I told the guys, it's not men's football. You know, you can fight with your opponent, but you don't fight internally. That's I'll never see that again. And you know, we had a real great conversation with the captain. You know, it was, look, John, but this happens in men's football. It's not a man or a women's thing here. This isn't, like, don't make this agenda thing. This is a dysfunctional team. And when things get tough in training, you fight each other. We have to eliminate the threat inside of this team, which is the broken relationships, these little cliques, the factions that I could see. Like, when you look at Canada and the diverse nation it is, that's what that team was. You had a situation in the USVI game, and I stopped the training and I pulled the guys to the side and I pulled the leaders and said, we can't have this. This has to change, because the Scottish boys went one way, the Spanish-speaking guys went one way, the Eastern European guys went one way, and the team just split in a moment where there was a fractious situation. And I said, like, unless you're willing to change this team's going nowhere. And over time, you've seen a shift. The leaders have, for me, brought the culture together. Now we can have fractious moments where people are competing and pushing each other's levels, where it doesn't end up in a complete split in the environment. And I think over time, the leadership group, Neil, have understood the importance of shared purpose. They've understood the importance of their own humility in the environment, and they've understood the importance of connecting every man and making every man feel part of this, regardless of what their race, their religions, their ages. They've done a job, and I have to put it down. People like Osorio, Milan Boyan, Maxime Crepeau, Mark Anthony Kerr, Samuel Piet, Daniel Henry, Richie Larea, just Junior Hoylett. I think, and I'm not going to mention Atiba because he hasn't been into enough camps to be one of those key influences. But I'd have to say those 8 guys have been the core of the shift in this team that you see. And my job has been facilitating them to understand higher levels of leadership are required. They all watched the All Black documentary on Richie McCaw, because for me, he's been the greatest sports leader that I've seen. And why do I know that? Because the mental performance coach who worked with us at the Olympics, Dr. Kerry Evans, worked directly with Richie. So I understood the type of things Richie was doing as a leader to bring that team to back-to-back World Cups and bring the best out of an All Blacks team that always had talent, but could never deliver in big moments. And these men have gone towards that. And I'd love to say, Herdman, you've done this, or you've done... It's instilling a leaderful culture with a group of guys that have embraced leadership. Why? Because when they come to camp, we have to work on it. And they have to come for an extra meeting, on top of the meetings we already do. And it's usually late at night, but they embrace it. And it's helped bring this group together in a way they haven't, maybe in the past.
John, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time this afternoon. That will wrap up our Friday media call with Coach John Herdman, Concacaf final round, FIFA World Cup qualifiers for Qatar 2022. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.